Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator, turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I have the honor of speaking with Phil Telpner. Phil is a financial advisor and the president of Breakout Private Wealth, a firm that helps recently divorced women take their finances from overwhelm and anxiety to opportunity. Phil is the author of Million Dollar Divorce: How to Avoid Money Anxiety After Divorce Without Sacrificing Your Lifestyle, and The Gen X Guide to Financial Independence. Phil, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you, and I can't wait to dive into your book. I've got it all right here, all
Oh,
ready to
wow.
go. But before we get into that, can you share with the listeners a little bit about yourself? How did you get here? What drew you to this particular line of business?
It was an accident. Uh, I started, I was a trader. I was a member of the board of trade in Chicago. I traded for a hedge fund. I went to Morgan Stanley and managed portfolios. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was talk to people about their money. Um, Having been in probably hundreds of meetings, it didn't take too long before I realized that what people cared about wasn't necessarily the performance of their portfolio, although that's important, but that's what Wall Street wants you to think. What they cared about was showing me pictures of their grandson playing baseball or getting married or pick it. And slowly I kind of evolved into that, and I find it to be the advice side, the human side of it, if you will, to be far more interesting and rewarding, quite honestly, than the numbers and all that. The working with women, uh, um, I was at a conference, a Morgan Stanley conference, a bunch of years ago, and I had to present a whole plan, a whole thing. And the woman said, you really should work with women. I think that you're great at this. And I'm like, kind of a dude, kind of, I'm like, "Arr." And I go home and I tell my wife, and she kind of laughs at me. And fast forward 5, 6 years, and I'm working with a coach that looks at my clients, and she's like, they're 80% women. Don't you think that you should concentrate in serving these people? I enjoy working with them. They're great clients. I can really help them. And that's how this whole thing kind of evolved.
I know that because you and I have talked too, and you also, in working with women, you work with a lot of really high-powered women, I mean, women across the board, but even high-powered women who have assets, to manage. They have a lot financially, but they still have tremendous anxiety around money. Why is that? You would think that once you were successful and had a certain level of wealth, you wouldn't worry about it anymore.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? There's a study out there, and I think the break point is like $75,000, where after like 75 or maybe 100, your basic kind of needs are met. And then everything else after that, like the incremental value of that next dollar, if you will, after a while stops, I'm not going to say having meaning, but stops having the same kind of meaning that it did. The anxiety I find is a combination of a few things. Number one, people, um, they're very successful in their world. My world is something that you don't learn about it. Most people, unfortunately, learn about financial planning and all the things that go into that um, long after they should. And it's just not taught in school. It's not taught the right way. It's and so people get to this kind of tipping point where they have this great career, uh, kids, family, sometimes working through a divorce, and they don't know what to do. And you know better than anybody, that's where the anxiety comes from. The anxiety comes, like I always tell my clients, that action's the antidote for anxiety.
I
Like
agree.
tiny, tiny. Like you want to lose weight, don't don't worry about the carbs. Like take two 10-minute walks outside every day. And like it's small actions over time compounds like your portfolio, like everything else in life. And it just takes coaching, obviously, accountability, and really magic can happen. It's so cool, um, but it's not easy.
No, I think nothing that's worthwhile in life ever is,
Well, right.
but it's interesting. I want to get into your book, and you say in your book that financial planning is fundamentally about answering questions, which isn't a definition that I've heard other financial planners use. And then you say, for post-divorce women, these questions all often revolve around three main concerns. Can I? How much? And what if? Tell me more about those questions.
Um, I believe strongly that people hire advisors, financial planners, uh, because they have questions. I've never met anybody that they may verbally say, I want a plan. I want, okay, that's what you read on the internet or whatever. What you really have is questions. Otherwise, like, you would never reach out or you would never agree to a meeting. So we all have these questions. Okay, can I, send my kids to private school? Can I send them to the college that they want? Can I help out a sibling or, heaven forbid, a family member that's going through some challenges? Can I invest in another business? Can I quit the job I hate and do something else? You know, that's the soundtrack that's going on in somebody's head. And when you throw in a divorce, whoa, that gets pretty loud for people. And just being able to be there in the beginning of the relationship and not sit there and here's what the industry does. Thanks for coming in, Karen. Tell me about your goals. Like, yeah, okay. Like I don't want to run out of money. I don't want to live under a bridge. Okay. Everybody's got the same goals. But that's not why you decided to come in. You decided to come in because you have questions. How much do I need to be able to quit my job and be financially independent? What if the maintenance changes? What if I fall in love, whatever, and decide to marry again? What if I need to help out my parents because heaven forbid they're having some challenges? Those are the questions. Like that's what we need to do with our clients at the beginning. And
So,
then, yeah,
let me interrupt you for a
yeah,
second.
sure, of course.
Let's say I come to you.
Hmm.
Oh, excuse me.
Hmm.
And so I come to you and I say, can I can I do what I want to do with my money? How much do I need? How do I not live under a bridge? What do you say to me? How do we start the relationship?
Well, there's obviously some analysis that has to happen to that, right? We would have to look at everything that you have going on, anything with a dollar sign, including like not just life insurance, but property casualty. It's amazing to me. Here's a pro tip. It's amazing to me how many people don't have enough umbrella liability insurance. So if you're listening, not, I don't want the compliance police after me, but double check your umbrella policy. It's cheap, and an extra few $1,000,000, especially if you have kids, is a requirement. Yeah,
Just for
so
those who
yeah.
don't know, what is an umbrella policy?
Well, it's a liability policy that goes over your whole, I guess, for lack, keep it simple, all of your other insurance policies. So it will add, millions of dollars, so to speak, onto, heaven forbid, your child's involved in a car crash, or hey, you go out of town for a weekend and like little Timmy has a few fellas over drinking some beers. Real world stuff that happens. So uh, it's relatively inexpensive and very, very critical. What we would call risk management, very sexy term, but it's one of the things that people just, especially if there's been a lot of paper back and forth and a divorce and stacks of this and stacks of that, sometimes that can just fall right aside. Unfortunately, it's until it's too late. So yeah, I mean, I use those questions, and I want to answer your question. Um, that gives us the direction that the planning relationship should go right from the beginning. Okay.
Mhm.
So it just helps people clarify. Um, I think I'd be doing a disservice to people. I know I would be if I wasn't answering their questions.
No, that makes total
Yeah.
sense. But
Oh.
the question I have for you is, let's say that there's a woman who's
Mm-hmm.
going through a divorce. At what point does it make sense for her to start asking these financial questions? I mean, should she be looking for a financial advisor in the beginning of her divorce? Should she, wait till the middle when their settlement talks start? Should she wait until after she's got the money and then says, now what to do? What do I do with it? At what point do you get involved, and do you recommend that people get someone like you involved?
I can just tell you, most of our clients come to us at the point after their divorce is finalized, and sometimes longer than I would like. But there seems to be a little bit of a pattern. Now there's some high profile, high net worth divorce that there's somebody that sits and walks, through side by side, and that's super cool and helpful. Um, but what I see is somebody that's been divorced a year, 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, that just lays there going, oh my God, like, how am I going to deal with this? I've got 6 hockey games, 4 baseball practices, and 2 dance classes I have to be at. And like, I have a stack of investment accounts. I don't even know what they mean. I don't know if this is right because my husband took care of it. And it just, it becomes really, overwhelming, I guess, so to speak. Um,
Do you find that a lot of the clients that come to you have a certain level of shame for not being on top of this, or they feel guilty? It's like,
oh,
I should have known
oh,
better, and so
oh,
that keeps them from
oh,
reaching out.
so good. Yeah, I would say in some cases, I know that's prevalent. Um, but to be honest, like the women that um and maybe this is why that step forward are very, there's a little bit of, oh, I should have paid attention to this, or oh my God, like I don't know my savings rate, or uh, 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 but I think we all have that, to be honest,
Yeah.
in some things. I don't, um, I just think that they're motivated because of perhaps their experience. They're motivated, uh, and sometimes it comes through the lens of their children. If children are involved, they want their children to see mom taking care of business. They don't
Hmm.
want to see mom curled up on the couch, crushing bottles of wine, watching Bravo or something. That the image is, I want my kids to know that mom's got this.
Yeah.
And if anybody's listening and is struggling for motivation, I think that's pretty powerful right there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, children learn by what they see, not by what you say. And seeing, their parents, either both parents, seeing them taking care of business, seeing them confident makes a whole lot of sense. But there are so many potential landmines that can blow up people's financial future after a divorce. I know you talk about some of them in the book. What are some of the landmines that somebody needs to pay attention to, hopefully sooner rather than later?
Uh, how about liability insurance? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so there's a couple that we've identified in the book. Um, Spousal support, maintenance, uh, um, you know, and I haven't seen it personally, but I know it's out there anecdotally as large firms have started laying people off. Um, I just read Google offered, I don't know how many, 10,000, 20,000 people early retirement packages or something like that. So we may be in one of those cycles where somebody that's had stable employment for 20 years now finds themselves to be 45 to 50 years old, and situation changes that can result in a change in maintenance if gone through the courts and done correctly. Well, I mean, if if there's not planning involved, if that is the sole source of income, so to speak, that can be problematic. So
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, sometimes we can manage it. Certainly we can talk about it. Certainly we can provide alternatives or provide, what if, because that certainly can happen. That
Yeah.
certainly can.
I think that's an important conversation these days because you hear everything with the advent of AI and that AI is going to replace so many jobs. And when somebody gets awarded spousal support, whether that's the man or the woman, they expect they're going to get what the court order says they're going to get for as long as they're going to get it. And you and I both know that that's not necessarily true. If the paying spouse loses their job and there is no more income to pay support, all that spouse has to do, and what they're going to do is go to court and say, hey, judge, I don't have a job. We need to put a pause on this, or we need to reduce it, or we need to eliminate it. And now you've got two ex spouses who are both in they both have financial problems because the only breadwinner lost a job. So What can, do you have any solutions for this? How can women
Mhm.
deal with that?
Well, I think it depends on the lifestyle and the size of the settlement in general, whether there's a way to generate some income replacement there, whether it almost becomes an early retirement if you can envision taking distributions from accounts. But again, that has to be thoughtful, right? There's a lot I have seen like messed up QDROs and like people just taking retirement distributions prior to 59 and a half and getting destroyed in taxes and penalties. And like, that's when you need, so, before you do anything, please get some advice. So there is a way to, maybe there's a reasonable gap that part-time work would fill
Mm-hmm.
if, as you transition from, let's just, stay at home mom to, I mean, everybody's situation is so different. Um, but running through those scenarios prior to being blindsided by something, you know, the house is always a big one, right? I see people trading long-term growth assets for the comfort of the family house. And I struggle with that. I understand the emotional part of it, but a home is a place to raise your family. It's really a poor investment, generally speaking. And trading your long-term growth at 8, 9, 10%, whatever that is, for a home that costs you a lot of money to keep going. Like, care needs to, like, that needs to be a well thought out, uh, uh, um, and you need to run the numbers on that too. Um,
I think you're bringing up a really good point because most people, the analysis when you're trying to figure out, should I keep the home or should we sell it, right? And you're 100% right. Everybody's like, we got to keep the home for the kids. Okay, cool. And, sometimes I understand you're in a certain school district, there's not a lot of rentals in your area. There's a lot of reasons to keep the house. But what you're
correct.
pointing out that most people, I don't hear a lot of people talk about and they don't think about is that if all of your money is tied up in your house, that money isn't growing in the same way that it might in if it was invested in stocks or bonds or some other kind of account. Now, everybody always thinks that the value of the house is always going to go up, so it's an investment. But I remember 2008.
Uh, General advice, if you have, let's just, 1% or 2% probably of the value of your home, you need to sidecar for uh, roof, HVAC, leaks, all the real fun stuff that us as homeowners have to go through. And when you kind of back out all that, I think your home uh, is not a good investment. It's a great place to raise your family. It's, you need a place to live in a nice area. Of course, of course, of course. I do not call it an investment. That's like saying a CD is a great investment. No, no.
Get you a few dollars in
Yeah,
interest, and that's about
maybe,
it.
yeah, taxable interest. Nah, not great. Yeah. Other ones. Healthcare, big thing.
Yeah, huge thing.
Okay, huge thing. Husband's a corporate guy, has a plan, family's been on the plan. What's that gonna look like? Um,
Mhm.
Tax planning, huge thing. Going from married filing jointly to either head of household or single, lower standard deduction, all sorts of tax things. We do tax planning as well. You could actually pay more taxes just because your standard deduction decreases than married filing jointly.
So how
So
would somebody, if somebody's thinking about they listen to you, they're like, ah, I never thought of this. I better check this out. Where do they even go? Do they go to a financial planner? Do they
Yeah.
go to a CPA? Do they go, how do they
Uh,
figure out what their post-divorce tax picture is going to look like?
Great question. Um, so there is a distinct difference between tax planning and tax preparation. Um, Generally speaking, CPAs will work in the rear view, right? You bring them all your
Yeah.
1099s, you bring them your W-2, you bring them some K-1s if you have partnerships, blah, blah, blah. They give you your return. You're like, oh no. And it kind of goes on after that. We have a team that does CPAs and that does tax planning. So again, the heavy lift to all of this is just a lot of documents. I tell when clients start, I just have a secure vault. I said anything that has a dollar sign, I don't doesn't matter what it is. If it has a dollar sign, send it over and we'll parse it out. But yeah, we can model that. What does that look like? Right? Where are your breakpoints? If you need to take might be the time depending on what the situation is. If your income goes down for some reason, might be a great time to do advanced stuff like strategic Roth conversions or something, right? So there's a lot of moving parts here. I like to that's all the work that we do behind the scenes, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And then it just becomes a presentation meeting and making sure that whether action's taken or not, at least the education's there. Sometimes it takes people a little bit, totally understandable. Um, that's why, the book, you know, the the theme is really like planning's a verb, right? Like planning is an ongoing process. We're
Mm.
with our clients every quarter, like a couple meetings face to face every year or Zoom, but it really becomes a process because like there is just no way it has to be done on a cadence, on a quarterly cadence, looking at certain one quarter could be investments, one quarter's tax, one quarter's risk, one quarter's estates, right? So it's a lot. Um,
You raise a really good point though, because as a non-CPA, right, I'm not,
right,
I know a little bit about taxes, just enough to be dangerous.
right.
And, I would think, just as an ordinary person, that my tax bracket is what my tax bracket is. And that, when you talk about tax planning as somebody who might have a 401k, a job, a few miscellaneous, an old IRA from somewhere or other, like
Right.
that there wouldn't be a lot that I can do. Now, if I had my own business, then it's
Yeah.
a different story. But are there things that your average person, whether they own a business or not, and especially if they do, that they can do to adjust how much taxes they're going to owe at the end of the year, assuming they don't wait till December 31st to do it?
Um, Always. Um, Depends on, of course, their situation. Uh, um, you know, I have some clients you know, very charitably inclined, right? So we do donor advised funds, not that complicated, but you could take some of your assets out of your estate, set up basically your own charity, right? And that's charitably inclined estate planning, but um, with it just depends. If you have a house, and let's say W-2 income, you're employed for a company, little things that people forget is how to use their HSA, their health savings account, how to max that thing
Yep.
out, how that it needs to be invested. Like you can invest those things, it should be invested. that if you don't touch it and keep and max it out, that grows triple tax deferred forever. So reduces your taxes,
Wow.
qualified healthcare expenses on the way out, tax-free, grows no capital gains on the inside of that. So grows and compounds tax-free. It's the best investment account known to man.
That's
Um,
really cool. I really hadn't thought of an HSA, a health savings account, in that way before, but
mhm,
when you say
mhm.
it, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, and you could, I mean, let's just come up with an extreme example. You're 35 years old. You could have $1 million in that and use it for your Medicare supplement, let's say,
Yeah, premiums.
or little Johnny needs another set of braces. There you go. Right. I mean, so there's always little things in there. I think, a lot of it becomes scenarios, right? Again, like
Right.
what if the questions, right? What if I take 2 years off? Does it make sense to take some of these 401k that will now became an IRA after the split? Does it make sense to turn that into Roth, pay the taxes now as income's low, and then grow and compound that Roth without tax consequences forever?
Yeah.
So again, it's very situational dependent, but modeling scenarios is really critical, critical. And another thing too is like if people are listening and they're working with an or they're thinking about an advisor, um, everything that I've ever seen in this business really has a big it depends to it. So
Yeah. Kind of like being a lawyer. It
yeah,
depends.
it does though, right? Like whole life insurance does not solve every problem, right? Okay, a well-managed investment account does not solve every problem, right? It's it's it depends, right?
Right.
So
So, what I'm hearing you say is that unless people are well versed in financial issues and financial vehicles themselves, they need someone like you. They need a financial advisor just to help them navigate the territory, especially if it's, post divorce and they're not used to living in this world, the financial world.
well, I of course I would agree strongly to that. I'm not going to shy away from that, but we all have blind spots.
Yeah, that's true.
And anybody that doesn't or thinks they don't kind of scares me. So we all have blind spots, and having somebody with a keen eye on these things to help you talk through those blind spots and make the best decision possible. I mean, decision making is a skill,
A hundred
right?
percent.
Good decision making is a skill. Um, the book was written the way it was because anxiety is you cannot make good decision. Good decisions can't be made in a state of anxiety.
Of course.
And so all these things that we talked about are what we do to dial that down if possible. And then clarity and better decision making can come from that. And that's amazing for you in your future. That's that's my version of financial planning. So
But that makes all the sense in the world because and I experience and work with clients in a similar way when they're going through a divorce because when you're going through a divorce, you're going to face more important life decisions in a constrained period of time than you are at any similar time period in your life. You have got to get your head in the game. You can't think clearly. You can't analyze something completely if you're an emotional wreck. So dealing with that anxiety, I love that You talk about calming things down, calming your brain down so that it's not on fire when you're trying to think about something that's complex and has, to your point, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I could not agree more. The benefit of coaching, the benefit, I always tell people if I wasn't doing this, I'd coach Pee Wee hockey or something like that. Because, the benefit of I've been coached a lot in my life. I still am in a variety of different areas. I just, every successful person I know has a coach, and the more successful they are, the more coaches they have.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's a chicken or an egg thing, but it is true. So I just think like clarity, and again, I'll get back to my original point about action. Can't get stuck. Have to keep your feet moving. I'm not a psychologist, but rumination, right?
Yeah.
The spiral, that's the worst place to be.
Yeah. 100%. That just takes you down, down to someplace you don't want to go.
And the only way to get out of that is to take the next best step.
Yeah. And you're right. I think a lot of people think they have to have everything figured out from now till
No,
eternity. That
no,
never happens,
nope.
right? All you have to know is what's your next best step.
I I I could, we have a dashboard of, I guess, financial vital signs, or that we monitor. So savings rate, liquidity, like how how much cash war chest, how much comfort do you have? And we'll just take savings rate. If I could get somebody's savings rate from 15% to 20, 25% over time, the compounding on that number is mind blowing. And nobody ever knows that I did it, except that we talk about it. It can just be those small incremental changes, and the long-term benefits of that are huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Phil, this has been such a helpful conversation, and I know a lot of women are going to get a lot out of it. If somebody
Think
wants to
so.
work with you, if they want to follow up or learn more, where's the best place for them to do it?
Um, my website, Breakout Private Wealth, pretty easy. But anybody that's listening, any of your great viewers, shoot me an email. PT at Breakout Private Wealth, my firm. PT for Phil Telpner at Breakout Private Wealth, all one word. We'll find some time to talk. We'll bounce emails around. It'd be great just to help if I can.
Phil, thank you so much. I really appreciate your sharing all of your advice and wisdom and smartness and all the things. So thank you so much
Hey,
for being here.
this was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And for those of you who are out there watching or listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you'd like to see more episodes just like it, do me a big favor. Give this episode a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It makes a bigger difference than you realize. And I look forward to seeing all of you again next time.